The Skyline Banquet Hall in the heart of downtown Chicago fell silent as Amelia Grant sat in her wheelchair, watching her husband Daniel wrap his arm around his visibly pregnant mistress in front of 200 stunned guests. "I'd like to introduce you all to Harper," Daniel announced proudly, "not just as our firm's new creative director, but as the mother of my child and the future I've always dreamed of." Cameras flashed as Daniel looked straight at Amelia, his disabled wife of 14 years, with something between pity and detached triumph. "Sometimes," he continued, raising his champagne glass, "life gives us a second chance at happiness." But as tears welled in Amelia's eyes, something unexpected happened. She smiled, and that smile sent a chill through Daniel's spine. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from. 3 years earlier, Amelia and Daniel Grant were the golden couple of the design world. Their sleek, modern penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan was the ultimate symbol of their success. He, the magnetic negotiator who could close any deal. She, the visionary architect whose work had not only won awards but redefined cityscapes. They balanced each other perfectly, recalled Natalie, one of Amelia's former collaborators. Daniel knew how to pitch Amelia's brilliance, and Amelia knew how to make Daniel's grand promises real. But everything changed one rainy Tuesday in early November. The accident at the Lakefront Heights development should have been impossible. Amelia was obsessive about site safety, Natalie remembered, but somehow the temporary platform gave way. She'd been inspecting the 15th floor of their latest mixed-use project when she fell. "The impact severely damaged her spine," explained Dr. Patel, the neurologist who treated Amelia. "At first, we weren't even sure if she'd survive, let alone walk again." After 3 complex surgeries and grueling rehabilitation, Amelia was eventually able to manage short distances with walking aids, but her day-to-day life was now wheelchair-bound. Her jam-packed schedule of job site walkthroughs, speaking engagements, and design sessions was replaced with physical therapy, specialist checkups, and rehab. And Daniel, the same man who once pledged to love her in sickness and in health, began to slowly but unmistakably pull away. To the outside world, Daniel Grant remained the picture-perfect husband. He hired top-tier doctors, renovated their home with high-end accessibility features, and delivered emotional speeches at industry fundraisers. "My wife has shown strength beyond words," he'd often say, one hand placed protectively on Amelia's shoulder. "Her resilience inspires me every single day." But behind closed doors, another story played out, one of cold silences, skipped dinners, and mounting resentment. The Lawson Foundation's annual gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden light over Chicago's most powerful. Amelia Grant sat near the edge of the grand hall, her wheelchair tucked behind a towering floral centerpiece at one of the less visible tables. From her vantage point, she could watch her husband Daniel effortlessly work the room. At 44, he was still undeniably handsome, his salt and pepper hair and expertly tailored tucks giving him the air of refined success. He moved through groups with practiced ease, each handshake and chuckle sealing business deals worth millions. "He really knows how to command attention," commented an older woman seated beside Amelia. "Your husband has the city council president wrapped around his finger." Amelia offered a polite smile. Daniel's always been good with people. What she didn't say was how she'd started noticing the widening gap between them, not just the physical space across the ballroom, but the emotional distance that had deepened since her injury. They had met 16 years ago at Columbia's prestigious architecture program. Amelia Lynn, the driven student from a family of civil engineers, and Daniel Grant, the smooth-talking scholarship kid with oversized ambition. He asked me to critique his final presentation. Amelia had once told her twin brother Aaron. It was a disaster, looked amazing, but wouldn't have passed basic wind load requirements. Instead of being insulted, Daniel laughed and invited her to dinner. "Teach me," he'd said. "I want to learn from the best." Their connection grew fast. Daniel's charm balanced Amelia's seriousness. Her meticulous approach sharpened his big-picture thinking. By graduation, they were a team in every way, founding Grant plus Lynn Sustainable Design with nothing but student debt and relentless drive. Their early work was humble, remodeling a bistro in Wicker Park, an eco-friendly pediatric clinic in Lincoln Square. But their reputation blossomed. Amelia's forward-thinking designs emphasized sustainability and inclusive access long before it was trendy. Daniel brought in clients and capital, his natural charisma swinging open doors that would have otherwise stayed shut. The turning point came 8 years ago when they won the contract for The Grove, a mixed-use redevelopment of an abandoned rail yard that went on to win multiple Green Architecture Awards and national recognition. "The Grove is what put us on the map," Daniel often said in interviews. "That's when I knew we were going to change the world." Success brought them wealth, recognition, and increasingly ambitious projects. Their modest studio eventually expanded into Grant Design Group. The rebrand, a quiet shift, was something Amelia had initially resisted but ultimately accepted as a strategic move. Their personal life seemed just as golden. Weekends at their retreat in Lake Geneva. Vacations spent admiring architectural marvels across Europe and Asia. Conversations about starting a family were always postponed, just one more big project. Until, eventually, those talks faded altogether. At the gala, Amelia glanced at her watch. It was nearly 10 p.m., and Daniel had hardly interacted with her since they arrived. She watched him animatedly chatting with Nicole Ramirez, the city's zoning commissioner, whose green light they desperately needed for their newest project. Her phone buzzed. "Don't forget your 10 p.m. meds. How's the gala? Surviving the small talk?" It was from Martina, her physical therapist. Amelia smiled. Martina had been one of the few steady sources of light since her accident. Strict during sessions, but always supportive and kind. She looked at Daniel across the room and texted back, "Practically invisible." "Their loss," Martina replied instantly. "Want me to come kidnap you? I make a very convincing medical emergency." Amelia chuckled softly, drawing a curious look from the older woman seated nearby. "Tomorrow's session still at 2? "Yes," Amelia replied, "and wear comfy clothes. We're trying something new." She was about to type another message when she noticed Daniel approaching. Commissioner Ramirez at his side. "And here's the mastermind behind all our accessibility initiatives," Daniel said warmly, resting a familiar hand on Amelia's shoulder with the practiced ease of someone performing affection. "My wife insists every grant project must be universally accessible." Amelia forced a smile. "It's just good design. Buildings should work for everyone." "So admirable," Ramirez replied, glowing. "Daniel was just telling me about your accident. Such a tragedy, especially for someone so gifted." Amelia kept her smile in place, even as she registered Daniel's carefully crafted narrative, casting her as the noble tragedy, her career spoken of in the past tense. "I still consult on all our projects," Amelia said clearly. "In fact, I've been working on some adjustments to the Riverline proposal I'd love to discuss with your office." The commissioner blinked, momentarily thrown. She glanced at Daniel, who smoothly stepped in. Amelia likes to stay involved when her health allows, when her health permits. "Now, Nicole, about that height variance." And just like that, Amelia was pushed aside from her own project. She watched as Daniel smoothly led Commissioner Ramirez away, already diving deep into the technical conversation that, not long ago, would have been Amelia's to lead. Later that night, their driver helped Amelia into the modified SUV they now used. Daniel was already checking his phone, the screen lighting up his face. "Everett wants to grab breakfast before the board presentation," he muttered, eyes never leaving the screen. "I'll have Linda bring your breakfast tray in the morning." "I could come to the presentation," Amelia offered. "It is our company." Daniel's smile was tight. "It's just quarterly financials, dull as dirt. Better for you to rest up for your therapy session." At home, their expansive smart home mansion, once a showcase of innovative architecture, had been fully updated with ramps and elevators after Amelia's fall. But what had once felt like a triumph of design now felt more like a sophisticated prison. Daniel guided her into the elevator with calm, practiced hands. He was helpful, efficient, but emotionally distant. In the bedroom, he placed her nightgown on the bed and set her medication neatly on the side table, while she wheeled herself into the adjoining accessible bathroom. Facing the mirror, Amelia took in the changes 3 years had carved into her reflection. Still striking at 41, but thinner. Dark circles permanently settled under her eyes. Her once toned frame, changed by injury and the inactivity that followed, felt foreign now. When she emerged, Daniel was already in bed, scrolling on his phone. Martindale confirmed the investment, he said without looking up. $30 million for the Fulton Square development. That's great, Amelia replied, voice soft, as she maneuvered from the chair onto the bed with mild effort. Daniel didn't move to help her, something that would have stunned her a few years ago, but now just felt normal. I'll be heading to Denver next weekend to finalize the details, he added. Only 2 nights. Amelia nodded, silently registering another business trip added to his growing list. The Denver team could just fly here, she suggested gently. Or I could come. I haven't traveled in forever. Daniel finally glanced at her, his expression blending impatience with mild condescension. Amelia, be realistic. With your condition, traveling's complicated. The team needs my full attention. The words stung, but Amelia had grown used to these quiet rejections. Of course, she murmured. Makes sense. Daniel reached over and gave her hand a light pat, a gesture that landed more like a formality than affection. That's my practical girl. Now take your medication. Know how you struggle to sleep without it. Amelia obediently swallowed the pills Daniel handed her, silently wondering when she had become someone who accepted these small indignities without protest. As Daniel turned off his bedside light and rolled onto his side, Amelia lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Their bedroom, like their marriage, had been redesigned in the aftermath of her accident. Her hospital-grade adjustable bed, positioned for accessibility, now stood beside Daniel's luxury mattress, separated by a discreet but undeniable gap. The next morning, Amelia woke to find herself alone in the house. Daniel had already left for his early meeting with Everett. A handwritten note was propped against the coffee maker. Breakfast is in the fridge. Linda arrives at 10. Don't forget your meds. Amelia crumpled the note, irritated by the patronizing tone. She brewed her own coffee, stronger than the bland blend Linda typically made, and wheeled herself into Daniel's private home office. Since the accident, she had been slowly edged out of daily operations at Grant Design Group. Her architect's license was still active, but her original designs were frequently revised by the growing team, with Daniel's final say. She scanned Daniel's pristine desk, searching for the Riverline proposal she'd referenced to Commissioner Ramirez. Nothing. His laptop was password protected. A sudden realization struck her. She no longer knew his password, something that would have been unimaginable 3 years ago. Just as she was about to wheel herself out of the office, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry, but you deserve to know the truth about your husband. Amelia stared at the message, her heart thudding. Attached was a photo. Daniel, his arm wrapped tenderly around a younger, stunning woman whose pregnant belly was unmistakable, standing outside what appeared to be a private medical facility. The timestamp was yesterday afternoon. At that time, Daniel had claimed he was in meetings preparing for the board presentation. Amelia couldn't unsee it. The photograph burned into her mind. The woman's face was unfamiliar, but Daniel's expression, tender, proud, was one Amelia hadn't seen directed at her in years. When Daniel finally returned home that evening, Amelia was composed. Her phone, with the incriminating photo, was tucked into the side pouch of her wheelchair. How was the board presentation? She asked casually as he loosened his tie. Went well, he said. We locked in the funding for the Riverline expansion. Expansion, Daniel said, pouring himself a scotch. He didn't offer Amelia one, as he once would have. How was therapy? He asked absently. Enlightening, Amelia replied. She looked at him carefully. Daniel, who is Harper? The question dropped into the room like a weight. Daniel's hand paused mid-sip, the only sign that the name meant anything to him. Harper Rowan, he said smoothly after a beat. She's the new project manager on the Riverline build. Why do you ask? Amelia didn't break eye contact. Is there something you want to tell me about your relationship with her? Daniel set the glass down with careful control. She's talented. I'm mentoring her, he replied. Amelia, what is this about? Without responding, Amelia reached into her wheelchair side pouch and retrieved her phone. She turned the screen toward him, revealing the photo. Daniel's expression hardened, but he didn't look particularly surprised. You're having me followed now? His voice had gone cold. Someone sent this to me. I don't know who. Amelia answered flatly. Daniel let out a dry, humorless laugh. And of course you jumped to the worst conclusion. That's the problem, Amelia. You've become so bitter. She's pregnant, Daniel. Yes, he said, not missing a beat, and her husband is thrilled. The lie was seamless, rehearsed. She felt faint at the office. I accompanied her to the clinic as a mentor. I was worried about her. Amelia wanted to believe him. Part of her did. The part that remembered the man who once adored her. That part clung to his explanation, needing it to be true. Her husband? She repeated softly. Greg Rowan? From Goldman? You met him at the Christmas party? Daniel didn't hesitate. Exactly. Is that really what you think of me, Amelia? That I'd be carrying on with a married, pregnant woman? Put that way, it did sound ridiculous. Amelia felt herself wavering. The person who sent this, she began. Daniel cut her off, suddenly more alert. Sounds like someone trying to cause problems, probably jealous of what we've built. Anonymous tips? Not worth your energy. Amelia admitted she didn't know who it was. Daniel nodded knowingly. There you go. Focus on things that matter. I need to review some contracts before dinner. As he left the room, Amelia sat motionless, unsettled by the too-perfect explanation and by how familiar this confusion felt. That slippery sensation of wondering if she was the one imagining things. It had become more frequent since her accident. But this time, something felt different. That night, long after Daniel had fallen asleep beside her, Amelia lay awake, mentally retracing every small inconsistency in his behavior from the past several months. The next morning, she made a decision. If Daniel was telling the truth, then there was nothing to worry about. But if he wasn't... Linda? Amelia called out to their housekeeper. I'd like to do a bit of online shopping this afternoon. Could you help set up my laptop in Daniel's office? The lighting's better in there. Once alone in Daniel's office, Amelia moved quickly. She retrieved the small wireless camera she had ordered weeks ago under the pretense of home security and discreetly tucked it between the books on the shelf behind his desk. Then she began to search. Most of the desk drawers contained mundane paperwork, contracts, invoices, expense reports. But in the back of the lowest drawer, she found a small metal key, one she didn't recognize. She slipped it into the pocket of her sweater and kept looking until Linda's voice called her to lunch. Over the next week, Amelia established a new daily rhythm. While Daniel was at the office or out at meetings, she reviewed the footage captured by the hidden camera, searching for any red flags. Most evenings, Daniel spent a couple of hours in his study, taking calls, reviewing files. Nothing stood out at first, but then came Tuesday. Daniel entered his office at his usual hour, but this time, he locked the door. A rare move. Amelia watched the live feed from her tablet, observing his manner. He made a call, his voice too low to pick up, but his expression was unmistakably affectionate. A private smile lingered. After the call, Daniel opened the drawer Amelia had searched. Using the very same key she'd found, he retrieved a small black notebook. He jotted down notes, flipped through a few pages, then locked it back up. The next day, with Daniel away at a construction site, Amelia took her opportunity. She used the key. Inside the locked drawer was the same black ledger. What she found made her breath catch. It wasn't part of their shared financial system. The book recorded transactions, large ones, wired to unnamed offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that wasn't all. In the margins were handwritten notes. Apt deposit, car, medical, Harper. Amelia's stomach turned. She photographed every single page, then returned the notebook and relocked the drawer, leaving no trace. That afternoon she made a call. Natalie, she said. It's Amelia. Amelia, oh my God, it's been forever. How are you? Managing, Amelia replied. I need to ask you something, in confidence. Of course. Do you know anything about a project manager named Harper Rowan? A pause. Harper? Young, gorgeous, always dressed like she walked off a runway? Around 30? That sounds right, Amelia murmured. She's been with Grant Design about a year now. Real rising star. At Grant Design for about a year now. Rising star, Natalie admitted. Then she hesitated. Amelia, there's been talk. Daniel seems unusually invested in her career. Lots of late meetings, private lunches. The office gossip mill lights up every time they're seen together. She sighed. I didn't want to bring it up without something concrete. Not after everything you've already gone through. Amelia's suspicions hardened into certainty. Thank you for being honest. One more thing, she added. Is Harper married to someone named Greg Rowan? Natalie let out a soft laugh. Harper? No, she's definitely single. Actually makes a point of letting everyone know. That confirmed what Amelia had already started to piece together. After the call ended, a strange calm settled over her. The pain of knowing was sharp, but the validation that she wasn't paranoid or imagining it was a strange comfort. That evening, Amelia observed Daniel more carefully than usual. The way he checked his phone each time it buzzed, the faint smile that lingered as he read certain messages. After dinner, he casually mentioned another trip. 3 days in Portland next week, for the McKinley project, he said. How interesting, Amelia replied, keeping her tone neutral. I thought the McKinley presentation wasn't until next month. Daniel barely paused. They bumped up the schedule. You know how developers are, impatient. But Amelia had seen an email that same morning on his laptop. It clearly confirmed the original date had not changed. After Daniel retreated to his office, Amelia wheeled herself quietly to the guest bedroom and opened her laptop. It was time to be methodical. She started a secure file and began listing everything she now knew for certain. Daniel had lied about Harper's marital status. He was transferring large amounts of money to secret accounts. Some of that money appeared to be supporting Harper. He had lied about his travel plans. She didn't have the full picture yet, but her instincts screamed that this was only the beginning. The Daniel she had married would never have betrayed her like this. Or had he? Had he always been capable of this kind of deception, and she had just been too in love to see it? The next morning, Amelia made a call. Martina, she said, skipping any preamble. I need a favor, something outside your typical duties. There was a pause. I'm intrigued, Martina replied, and slightly concerned. Amelia hesitated, then chose to be fully honest. I need you to help me follow my husband. I think he's having an affair. Silence. Then, firmly, I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something dark. That night, Martina drove them to an upscale restaurant on the north side in her modest Honda, parking just far enough away to give them a clear view of the entrance. Sure enough, at 8:15 p.m., Daniel arrived, not in his usual Tesla, but in an Uber. 10 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up, and Harper stepped out, her pregnancy now undeniable, even beneath a tailored wool coat. Amelia raised her binoculars and watched as Daniel greeted her, not with a handshake or polite hug, but with a slow kiss. His hand lingered on her pregnant belly, full of unmistakable pride. I've seen enough, Amelia said quietly. Martina gently squeezed her hand. What now? Now, Amelia replied, I find out just how deep this goes. Over the next 2 weeks, Amelia worked methodically, piecing together a case with quiet precision. She located credit card statements showing purchases of expensive jewelry from Tiffany's, items she'd never seen. She found travel reservations for a weekend stay at a luxury resort in Napa, booked during Daniel's supposed Portland trip. Most damningly, she uncovered property documents. A luxury penthouse purchased in Daniel's name alone, unlisted among their joint assets. It was located in The Briar, their latest high-rise residential project, still under construction. But then came the discovery that broke her. While searching Daniel's home office for more financial evidence, Amelia found a small velvet box tucked beneath a false bottom in the desk drawer. Inside wasn't jewelry, but a sonogram image. Baby Grant, 24 weeks. The name Harper Rowan was clearly printed across the top. Amelia stared at it, her vision blurring with tears. That's when she heard the voice behind her. What the hell do you think you're doing? She turned to see Daniel standing in the doorway, his expression a tangled mix of rage and panic. Finding the truth, she said steadily, holding up the sonogram. Your mentee is carrying your child. Daniel's face turned to stone. You had no right to go through my things. No right? Amelia's voice cracked. I'm your wife. That image should have been our baby. This, Daniel snapped, is exactly why I didn't tell you. Look at yourself. Emotional, irrational. You're not stable enough to handle the truth. Not stable? Amelia echoed, stunned. You're having an affair. You're funneling money offshore. You're buying hidden property. And I'm the unstable one? Daniel stepped closer, his voice dropping into something darker. Calm, controlled. Amelia, you haven't been well since the accident. The doctors warned me. Psychological side effects from your trauma, paranoia, delusions, persecution fantasies. Don't you dare, Amelia whispered, her voice trembling with fury. Don't you dare try to weaponize my mental health. But Daniel wasn't done. His tone shifted into something almost tender. So rehearsed it felt clinical. It was almost believable. "I've been worried about you for months," Daniel said softly. "These conspiracy theories, the hidden cameras." "Yes, I found it," he added, noticing the flicker of shock on Amelia's face. "Amelia, you need help." "What I need," she replied calmly, "is a divorce lawyer." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Not heartbreak, not remorse, calculation. "If that's what you think is best," he said slowly. "But I should warn you, any judge is going to consider your mental state when dividing assets, especially given how unpredictable you've been since the accident." The threat was subtle, but razor sharp. "Challenge me, and I'll make you look unstable." Daniel's tone softened again, returning to that faux concern that had begun to feel like a weapon. "I've truly been worried for months. The paranoia, the secret cameras, it's not like you." Amelia said nothing. "Yes, I found it," he repeated. "And yes, I've been documenting your behavior. You need help." "What I need is to be free of your lies," she said, and again that same flash in his eyes. Cold, strategic. This wasn't a man grappling with guilt. This was someone already 3 moves ahead. After Daniel left the room, Amelia sat in her wheelchair, trembling, the sonogram still clutched in her lap. She had expected confrontation, maybe even some twisted relief on his part, now that his secret was out. But this was something darker. That night, she passed by Daniel's office and heard him on the phone. The door wasn't fully shut. "She found the sonogram," he was saying quietly. "No, don't worry. I've been documenting her erratic behavior for months. My lawyer says we have options." He paused, then added, "Yes, a psychological evaluation would be the first step, of course. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of." Amelia backed away from the door, wheeling silently down the hall to her bedroom, a numb chill settling over her. Daniel wasn't just planning to leave her. He was laying the groundwork to have her declared mentally incompetent. The implications were horrifying. Control over her medical decisions, her finances, her freedom. For the first time since she'd uncovered Daniel's betrayal, Amelia felt something deeper than anger or sorrow. She felt fear. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. This was a battle for survival. The next morning, Amelia woke with clarity and a decision. If Daniel wanted war, she couldn't meet him with raw emotion. That would only serve his narrative, that she was unstable, irrational. She had to be smarter, strategic. She started with the medications. For months she had accepted, without question, the pills Daniel handed her every morning and night. A blend of painkillers, muscle relaxants, and sleep aids prescribed by various doctors. "Martina," she said during their next session, "can you look at something for me?" She handed over a small tray lined with pill bottles from her bathroom cabinet. Martina examined them, one by one. Her brow furrowed the deeper she looked. "How long have you been on this exact combination?" she asked. "About 8 months, Amelia replied. "Why?" Martina pointed at 2 bottles. "This muscle relaxant? At this dosage, it would leave anyone groggy and foggy. And this one? This isn't even usually prescribed for spinal trauma anymore. It's been linked to memory issues and disorientation in long-term use." A cold knot formed in Amelia's stomach. "Daniel handles my medication schedule," she admitted quietly. "He says it's too complicated for me to keep track of while I'm on them." Martina's jaw clenched. "I think it's time you see a different neurologist, someone you choose." Dr. Sarah Winters, the neurologist Martina recommended, reviewed Amelia's medical records with a slow-growing look of concern. "Miss Grant," she said gently, "a number of these prescriptions are contraindicated for your condition, and the dosages are unusually high." She paused, then asked, "Who's been managing your prescription plan?" "My primary care doctor, Dr. Harris," Amelia replied. "He works closely with my husband." Dr. Winters frowned. "I see scripts from multiple specialists, but there's almost no coordination between them." She hesitated again. "With your permission, I'd like to order some blood work and put together a new treatment plan." Amelia nodded. The test results confirmed Dr. Winters' suspicions. Amelia's blood showed elevated levels of certain medications, more than what was officially prescribed, suggesting someone had been increasing her dosages without proper medical oversight. "This combination would cause fatigue, confusion, and memory issues," Dr. Winters explained gently. "It may have even been slowing your physical recovery." Under Dr. Winters' supervision, Amelia began tapering off the unnecessary medications. The process was uncomfortable. She experienced withdrawal symptoms, headaches, restless nights, but within 2 weeks, the fog began to lift. Her mind felt sharper, her thoughts clearer, and for the first time in a long while, Amelia started to feel like herself again. Her thoughts were sharper, her energy returned, and most significantly, her physical therapy began to show real progress. "You've improved more in the past 10 days than in the last 3 months," Martina observed during one particularly productive session. Meanwhile, Amelia continued building her case against Daniel, now with a focused mind and a renewed sense of purpose. Through a referral from Dr. Winters, she hired a private investigator, Clara Jenkins, who had unfortunately encountered similar cases of medication misuse and manipulation in the course of her work. Clara was sharp, discreet, and fast. Within days, she returned with a full timeline detailing Daniel's relationship with Harper Rowan, evidence that their involvement dated back more than 16 months, well before Amelia's accident. They met at a development conference in Denver, Clara explained, laying out a series of time-stamped photos. Harper and Daniel at a hotel bar, his hand resting comfortably on the small of her back. The timestamp read, February of last year, 3 months before Amelia's fall. She was hired at Grant Design less than 4 weeks after this event, Clara added. Amelia stared at the images, nausea creeping into her chest. "There's something else," Clara continued. Her tone shifted, now cautious. "I looked into the inspection records for the construction site where your accident occurred, specifically the temporary platform that collapsed." Amelia's gaze snapped up. That platform had been flagged for reinforcement a week before the incident, Clara continued. A work order was filed, marked as completed. "But there's no evidence," she paused, "that the repairs were ever done." Amelia frowned. "That happens sometimes. On busy builds, paperwork gets ahead of actual site work." "True," Clara agreed. "But here's the thing. The signature on the work completion form," she slid a copy across the table, "belongs to Daniel Grant." A cold chill surged through Amelia's veins. "Are you suggesting Daniel knew the platform was unsafe when I was sent to inspect it?" Clara was careful with her words. "I'm saying the timing raises serious concerns. Your fall occurred just 3 weeks after Ms. Rowan was hired, the same site where Daniel personally signed off as safe despite flagged structural warnings. It was a possibility almost too horrific to consider. Amelia had always believed her fall was a tragic accident, bad luck in a dangerous industry. But now?" She reviewed Clara's evidence again. The patterns were too clear to ignore. After the fall, Daniel had taken command of every part of her recovery. He chose the doctors, managed her prescriptions, gradually cut her off from her professional circle and longtime friends. "It's too much for you right now," he would say. Looking back, those words no longer felt protective. They felt controlling. "Focus on your recovery," Daniel would say any time Amelia mentioned visiting the office or attending industry events. Amelia reached out to Natalie again, this time with more pointed questions, particularly about her attempted return to work 6 months after the accident. "I always thought that was odd," Natalie admitted. "You were scheduled to come back part-time. Your office was fully prepped. Then suddenly Daniel told everyone you'd had a setback and needed more time." "I don't remember any setback," Amelia said slowly. "Daniel told me the accessibility modifications weren't ready." There was a pause on the other end. "Amelia, those accommodations were finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule. I managed them myself." The picture that was forming was as infuriating as it was chilling. Daniel hadn't just betrayed Amelia's trust, he had systematically sabotaged her recovery, her return to work, and her autonomy, while carefully shaping a narrative that painted her as too impaired, too mentally unstable to resume her career. With Martina's help, Amelia connected with a rehabilitation specialist who developed a rigorous private therapy program, one conducted far from Daniel's watchful eye. 3 times a week, while Daniel believed she was attending art therapy sessions, he had personally suggested, supposedly supervised by a licensed therapist, actually Martina's cousin, Amelia was undergoing intensive strength and mobility training. Progress was slow, but real. As the unnecessary medications finally left her system, Amelia found herself able to stand for longer periods. She began taking short walks, using only a cane for support. These were milestones Daniel had told her were impossible, given her condition. "He never came to your appointments, did he?" Amelia asked Martina one day. "The ones where they supposedly told him your prognosis was poor?" Martina shook her head. "I've reviewed your full medical file. Multiple specialists noted that with aggressive therapy, you had real potential for recovery. Daniel canceled or postponed almost all of those sessions." Now fully aware of the extent of the deception, Amelia contacted Rafael Dominguez, an attorney specializing in elder abuse and financial exploitation. "You know I'm not elderly," Amelia said cautiously during their initial meeting. "Doesn't matter," Rafael replied. "Most of the legal protections for vulnerable adults apply to disabled individuals being exploited by caregivers or spouses. What you've described is classic medical gaslighting and financial coercion. The manipulation of your prescriptions alone could carry criminal liability." "I have to move carefully," Amelia said. "Daniel has resources, connections. He's been keeping records to paint me as unstable." Rafael nodded, his expression hardening. "Then we build a case stronger than his. Document everything and prepare for the right moment," Rafael said firmly. "But most importantly, we ensure your physical safety." That had become a real concern. As Amelia reduced her medication and regained mental clarity, Daniel's behavior grew more controlling, subtly, but unmistakably. He installed a home security system that sent him real-time alerts whenever exterior doors opened. He began checking her pill bottles regularly, monitoring her dosage compliance, forcing Amelia to create elaborate systems of deception just to maintain her independence. But it didn't stop there. Through Clara's continued investigation, Amelia learned something that sent a fresh wave of dread through her. Daniel had recently consulted with an attorney specializing in conservatorships, the legal process used to assign control over mentally incapacitated adults. "He's laying the legal groundwork to take control of your finances, medical decisions, everything," Rafael warned, grim-faced. "We need to accelerate our timeline." Amelia nodded. "Yes, but we do it thoroughly. I want everything out, not just the affair. I want to expose the financial manipulation, the medical abuse, and possibly his role in my accident." That final thread began to unravel when Clara tracked down Marcus Jones, a former security guard who had worked at the Riverline construction site the day Amelia fell. He'd been hesitant to talk, but eventually agreed to meet with Amelia and Rafael at the law office. "I wasn't even supposed to be there that day," Marcus said nervously. "I switched shifts with another guard. That's why he came to me afterward." "He?" Amelia asked. "Your husband," Marcus said. "2 days after the accident, he asked me to delete certain footage from the security feed." Marcus shifted in his seat, unable to meet Amelia's eyes. "He said it showed you in a private moment, crying, upset, that he wanted to protect your dignity." Marcus exhaled. "He offered me $5,000 in cash." "Did you delete it?" Rafael asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I'm not completely stupid. I kept a copy. Insurance, you know? Never thought I'd need it." The old flash drive Marcus handed over contained grainy footage, but what it revealed was devastating. The first clip, timestamped 6:42 a.m., nearly 3 hours before Amelia's scheduled walkthrough, showed Daniel on site, alone, standing near the temporary platform. He examined the structure for several moments. Then came the second clip, also from that morning. Daniel speaking with the site foreman, gesturing toward the platform and slipping him an envelope. The foreman nodded, pocketed it, and walked away. No repairs were made. Amelia stared at the screen in horrified silence. It wasn't definitive, but it was enough. The footage wasn't just damning. It was proof that Daniel had knowingly allowed Amelia to inspect an unsafe platform, that he had seen the danger and done nothing. "This crosses into potential criminal territory," Rafael said quietly. "Negligence at minimum, attempted manslaughter at worst." Amelia surprisingly felt calm as the final puzzle pieces clicked into place. "We need multiple copies of everything," she said firmly. "Secured, backed up, stored where Daniel can't touch them." As the legal team began locking down evidence and tightening strategy, Amelia received a call from Natalie. "Daniel's planning the company's annual gala," she said cautiously. "But instead of hosting it at the downtown hotel like usual, he's holding it at your house. He said it's to make it easier for you to attend." Amelia instantly understood what that meant. When exactly? She asked. 6 weeks from Saturday, Natalie replied. And he's very involved in the planning. Through strategic questioning and quiet observation, Amelia uncovered Daniel's real plan. The gala was a stage. Daniel intended to announce Harper as both his new business partner and the mother of his child, his way of publicly rewriting the narrative of their lives, recasting Amelia as the tragic past and Harper as the glowing future. "He's going to do it while you're there?" Martina asked, appalled, after Amelia filled her in. "To humiliate you in your own home?" Amelia's smile was thin. "Actually, it's perfect. He's building the stage I need." With 3 weeks to go, Amelia kicked into high gear. Her circle of allies, once scattered, was now a tight unit. Raphael finalized legal filings. Clara compiled and cross-referenced every piece of evidence into a single irrefutable package. Martina pushed Amelia harder in therapy, designing sessions to build stamina for what was coming next. "We need to be methodical," Amelia said during a planning meeting at Raphael's office. "Daniel's expecting a breakdown, or an outburst, something he can spin into another story about my mental instability." Raphael nodded. "The evidence is strong, but timing and delivery will be everything." Amelia had also reconnected with her twin sister, Elise. Years of emotional distance had formed between them, a wedge Amelia now saw for what it truly was, part of Daniel's strategy of isolation. "He always said you were too busy with your cybersecurity work to visit," Amelia told her. Elise's expression darkened. "I tried, Amelia. After the accident, I came by at least 5 times. He always said you were too tired or in too much pain to see anyone." She squeezed Amelia's hand. "I knew something was off. I knew it. When my birthday gifts to you went unacknowledged," Elise had said quietly, "I knew something wasn't right. We've never missed each other's birthdays." With her expertise in digital security, Elise became a vital asset to the team. She helped Amelia breach Daniel's password-protected files, and what they found was staggering. Email threads confirming the existence of offshore accounts, where Daniel had funneled millions siphoned from company profits. A digital paper trail of correspondence with Harper stretching back before Amelia's accident. Messages to doctors, coaching them to emphasize Amelia's limitations over her recovery potential. Search histories on medications known to cause confusion, cognitive fog, and memory issues. Architectural renderings and contracts for a luxury penthouse being prepared for Harper, funded, shockingly, through money laundered out of their charitable organization. "He's been embezzling from the Grant Foundation," Amelia murmured, stunned. The Grant Foundation for Inclusive Design had been her passion project, dedicated to funding elevators, ramps, and other accessibility upgrades for underserved communities. Elise shook her head as she scrolled through the ledgers. According to these logs, over $2 million were rerouted this year alone, supposedly allocated to projects that, surprise, don't exist. The betrayal went deeper than infidelity, deeper than gaslighting. Daniel had corrupted Amelia's life's work, using a foundation meant to uplift disabled people to finance a secret future with Harper. Still, Amelia insisted they maintain complete secrecy. She continued taking the placebo pills Martina had prepared, allowing Daniel to believe she remained sedated and dull. She even played the part of the devoted, detached wife, expressing excitement about the upcoming gala, offering suggestions on the floral arrangements and catering menus. "I just want everything to be perfect," she told Daniel, with practiced warmth. "It's been so long since I was part of a company event." Daniel smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "That's the spirit, Amelia. It's important for everyone to see us united." The irony made Amelia's stomach turn. 2 weeks before the gala, she sat down with Camila Vega, a respected investigative journalist known for her hard-hitting pieces on corporate corruption. It was Raphael who insisted on the meeting. "Once this story is public, it becomes much harder for Daniel to retaliate," he explained, "or control the narrative." Camila listened, wide-eyed, as Amelia walked her through the deception, the documents, the footage, the meds. "This," Camila said softly, "goes way beyond a personal betrayal." Camila took notes while reviewing the evidence Amelia and her team had gathered. The foundation fraud, the safety violations, the manipulated prescriptions, and the offshore accounts. "This isn't just betrayal," she said slowly. "This is systemic corruption, with real victims." "I want to be clear," Amelia replied, her tone calm but firm. "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. I need to make sure Daniel can't ever do this to anyone else." Camila studied her closely. "Your restraint is remarkable, especially considering what you've endured." Amelia gave a small, tight smile. "I've had a lot of time to think, sitting in this chair." As the gala drew near, Amelia and Elise worked around the clock to ensure every part of their digital plan was flawless. Hidden cameras were discreetly installed throughout the main level of their home. The presentation system, one Daniel intended to use for his company announcement, was subtly modified, giving Amelia full override access. "He won't be able to shut it down remotely," Elise assured her. "Once you activate it, the sequence will complete, no matter what anyone tries." Daniel remained completely unaware, interpreting Amelia's renewed energy and involvement as simple eagerness to rejoin the social world. If he noticed her increasingly long movements through the house, or the rare moments when she stood unassisted to reach a book or mug, he didn't comment. Maybe he believed his gaslighting had worked so well, she'd stopped expecting anything better for herself. 1 week before the gala, Amelia met privately with Maria Gonzalez, a senior city inspector who had reviewed the evidence of safety violations across Daniel's construction sites. "These aren't minor oversights," Maria said, brows furrowed. "This is deliberate neglect of basic safety protocols." "If even half of this is confirmed," she continued, "Grant Development could be looking at license suspension, maybe worse." "I want it handled the right way," Amelia insisted. "My personal situation aside, people's lives are at risk." The night before the gala, Amelia sat alone in her studio, the one room in the house Daniel had never touched. Once it had overflowed with architectural renderings and scale models. Now it held files, hard drives, envelopes. Every piece of evidence was meticulously cataloged, securely stored, and backed up in multiple locations. Encrypted servers managed by Elise, hard copies in Raphael's care, and a flash drive in a safety deposit box that only Amelia could access. Her phone buzzed. "Martina, everything's in place for tomorrow. Are you ready?" Amelia looked up at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her was no longer disoriented, no longer dependent, no longer under Daniel's control. Her eyes were steady, her posture upright, even seated in her wheelchair. The haze of unnecessary medication was gone. The unnecessary medications had cleared from her system. The intensive physical therapy, pursued in secret, had restored far more mobility and strength than Daniel believed possible. "Ready," Amelia texted back to Martina. Then, after a beat, "He has no idea what's coming." That night, Daniel was unusually attentive, bringing Amelia a cup of her favorite chamomile tea as she got ready for bed. "Big day tomorrow," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Looking forward to seeing everyone?" Amelia accepted the cup, noticing the faint bitterness she now recognized instantly. He'd slipped her medication into it, something he'd begun doing when he suspected she wasn't taking the pills on her own. "Very excited," she replied smoothly. As she lifted the cup to her lips, she tilted it just enough to let the tea flow silently into the potted fern beside her bed, a maneuver she had perfected weeks ago. "It feels like the beginning of something new," she said softly. Daniel's smile widened. "That's exactly right. A new chapter." If he noticed the double meaning, he gave no sign. As he turned to leave, Amelia called after him quietly. "Daniel, do you remember what you said to me the day you proposed, about why you loved me?" He paused, momentarily thrown by the unexpected sentiment. "I said a lot of things that day." "You told me you loved my mind," Amelia said, her voice gentle. "That I was the smartest person you'd ever met." Daniel's expression flickered, maybe a moment of true emotion, or perhaps just surprise. But his polished persona quickly returned. "Get some rest, Amelia," he said. "Tomorrow's an important day." As the door closed behind him, Amelia turned toward the quiet room and whispered, "Yes, it certainly is." The day of the gala arrived with crisp autumn air and brilliant afternoon sunlight glinting off the glass facade of their modernist home. Professional decorators had transformed the ground floor into a stunning venue, elegant floral installations, ambient lighting, and a small stage where Daniel would deliver his company's big announcement. Amelia prepared slowly and deliberately that morning. She chose a midnight blue gown, the same one she had worn to a high-profile charity event 3 years earlier, the last major appearance before her fall. Daniel had always said it was his favorite. He raised a brow when she asked Linda for help getting into it. "Are you sure that's appropriate?" he asked, glancing at her wheelchair. The styling team brought options that might be more comfortable. "I want to wear something that reminds people who I was," Amelia said evenly. "Who I am." She smiled calmly. "Don't worry," Linda modified it perfectly. By 6 p.m., the staff were finishing final preparations. The lighting was soft, the champagne chilled. Amelia positioned herself in the salon, adjacent to the main reception area. From there, she could see the flow of guests as they entered, friends, colleagues, business leaders, all unaware of what was about to unfold. She sat in stillness, her expression unreadable. But her eyes were fierce. Daniel was in his element. He moved confidently through the space, directing catering staff, checking lighting angles, and tweaking last-minute details like a conductor fine-tuning his orchestra. He wore a tuxedo Amelia had never seen before. Another small betrayal layered atop the mountain of greater ones. "Are we confirmed for 8:30? She overheard him asking his assistant. "Yes, Mr. Grant," the young woman replied. "The car is scheduled to pick up Ms. Thadback Rowan at 8:15. All board members and key investors are present." Daniel nodded, satisfaction evident on his face. "Perfect. Make sure Amelia's chair is positioned near the back once everyone's arrived, visible enough for appearances, but not center stage." The casual cruelty of the instruction didn't surprise Amelia. It only confirmed what she already knew. Tonight wasn't just about launching a new project. It was about erasing her. Guests began arriving around 7. From her vantage point in the salon, Amelia watched Daniel greet each one with charm and polish, playing the role of visionary CEO and devoted husband. When he finally wheeled her out into the reception area, his hand rested possessively on her shoulder, guiding her like a stage prop through carefully scripted introductions. "Amelia has been so looking forward to seeing everyone," he said with performative warmth, patting her hand. "Haven't you, dear?" Amelia smiled, nodded, and played her part. Present, subdued, graceful. She received compliments, how radiant she looked, how inspiring her presence was, and she smiled graciously through all of it. Eventually, the staff positioned her wheelchair near the back of the main room, partly hidden behind a towering floral arrangement. Exactly as Daniel had instructed. By 8:30, the gala was in full motion. Nearly 200 guests filled their modernist glass home. Board members, investors, city officials, and high-profile figures from the architectural and business community. Amelia's eyes tracked a few names Daniel had been eager to impress: Mayor Harrison, Commissioner Ramirez, and Draymond Jefferson, the venture capitalist whose funding had accelerated Grant Development's expansion into 3 new states. At precisely 8:40, a sleek black sedan pulled up in front of the house. Amelia watched through the tinted window as Daniel stepped outside to greet Harper personally. She was resplendent in a form-fitting gold gown that emphasized her pregnancy. Daniel kissed her cheek with practiced intimacy, his hand resting on the small of her back as he led her inside. The noise in the room softened noticeably as they entered. Heads turned. Conversations stalled. Guests took in the unfamiliar woman and the familiar way Daniel introduced her, connecting names, timelines, and now consequences. Amelia noticed the quick, darting glances in her direction. People were piecing it together. At exactly 9, Daniel stepped onto the small stage at the front of the room. He clinked his glass, drawing attention. The lights subtly dimmed. A projection screen flickered on behind him, displaying the Grant Development logo in bold, crisp lettering. "Friends, colleagues, esteemed partners," Daniel began, his voice full of charm and command. "Thank you for joining us this evening, in our home, for what I believe will be a defining moment for our company's future." Amelia remained still in the shadows, but inside, every part of her was wide awake. "A special evening," Daniel said, his eyes scanning the crowd, "in our home." Amelia noted his deliberate choice of words, "our home," maintaining the illusion of unity, right up to the moment he planned to dismantle it publicly. "Grant Development," he continued, "has always been built on vision, on seeing opportunity where others see obstacles." The screen behind him shifted to renderings of an ambitious new project, the Horizon, a sleek, mixed-use development featuring soaring glass towers, expansive green spaces, and smart infrastructure. "This is our future," Daniel declared, his tone full of practiced enthusiasm. "A future that embraces innovation, sustainability, and new leadership." He extended his arm toward Harper, gesturing for her to join him on stage. "It is my honor to introduce Harper Rowan, who joins Grant Development as our new creative director, and my partner in bringing the Horizon to life." Applause rippled through the room, but Amelia noticed how forced it sounded. How many guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes flicking between Daniel, Harper, and the wheelchair in the corner of the room. Daniel slipped his arm around Harper's waist, his smile stretching wider as she joined him. "Harper brings a fresh perspective and a design sensibility that's reshaping how we build," he said proudly. "Her vision for accessible, sustainable communities aligns perfectly with Grant Development's new direction." The irony was almost dizzying. Daniel using Amelia's lifelong advocacy for accessibility as a shiny tagline to launch his affair partner into the spotlight. "But tonight," Daniel said, lowering his voice into the soft, intimate tone Amelia knew too well, "is about more than business." A murmur rolled through the audience, a ripple of discomfort as the emotional pivot signaled what was coming. "It's about honesty and new beginnings." The room quieted. Daniel turned toward Amelia, making direct eye contact with her for the first time that night. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said. "Sometimes it brings challenges that change our course forever." Amelia sat motionless, composed, her expression unreadable. "3 years ago, Amelia and I faced something unimaginable," Daniel continued, his face carefully arranged into the perfect mask of heartfelt compassion. "Her accident changed both of our lives." A respectful hush fell across the crowd. "She has shown extraordinary resilience, grace in the face of difficulty." "What it means to adapt." Polite nods and murmured appreciation followed. Expected platitudes, the kind of socially safe applause reserved for public strength. "But," Daniel said, his tone warming into something more intimate, "life also has a way of delivering unexpected joy." He turned toward Harper, placing her hand delicately on her rounded belly. "Sometimes when we least expect it, we're offered a second chance at happiness." A collective shift rippled through the crowd. "Harper and I," Daniel announced, "are expecting a child, our son, due in 3 months. He represents not just a new beginning for our family, but the future of this company, this vision, and everything Grant Development stands for moving forward." Amelia sat still, surrounded by soft floral arrangements positioned deliberately behind the crowd out of focus. But her silence was not surrender. It was the silence before the storm. "I've always dreamed of." The applause faltered. Conversations broke out in hushed tones. A few audible gasps echoed across the room. Chairs shifted. Champagne glasses paused mid-air. All eyes turned toward Amelia, waiting, expecting the collapse Daniel had carefully engineered. Instead, Amelia smiled, and then slowly, deliberately, she began to wheel herself toward the stage. "Amelia," Daniel said sharply, his voice laced with warning, "perhaps you should." "I'd like to say something," she interrupted. Her voice was clear, composed, and stronger than anyone in the room had heard in years. There was a beat of hesitation. Daniel's face flickered, uncertainty slipping past his mask. He couldn't refuse without looking callous, not in front of investors, colleagues, and city officials. "Of course," he said tightly, offering her the microphone with reluctant hands. Amelia positioned herself center stage between Daniel and Harper. She accepted the mic, took a moment, looked out at the crowd, faces she had known for years, people who had believed Daniel's story of her decline without ever questioning the details. "First," Amelia began calmly, "I want to congratulate Daniel and Harper." A ripple of discomfort moved through the audience. A child is always a blessing, no matter the circumstances of its conception. Harper's eyes dropped to the floor. Her cheeks flushed. Daniel's smile held steady, but it was visibly strained. "I've known about their relationship for quite some time," Amelia continued, her voice unwavering. Murmurs spread like static through the crowd. "Just as I've known about the penthouse Daniel purchased for them in the Briar, using funds diverted from the Grant Foundation for Inclusive Design." Daniel stepped forward abruptly, hand reaching for the microphone. "Amelia, you're upset. Let's not." "I'm not upset, Daniel," she said, coolly pulling the mic away. "I'm finally clear-headed." She turned to face the audience fully now. Clear-headed, she repeated, because I've spent the last 2 months weaning myself off the unnecessary medications Daniel has been giving me, medications that kept me weak, confused, and dependent. The room went utterly still. You see, Daniel didn't just betray me with an affair, Amelia said, her voice firm and crisp. He systematically sabotaged my recovery from the very beginning. She pressed a hidden button in her lap. The projection screen behind them flickered, swapping out the sleek architectural renderings for something else. Medical records. These, Amelia said, pointing, are my actual prescription records, authorized by my doctors. The slide changed, side-by-side comparisons now. And these, she continued, are the records Daniel edited and sent to my care team, increasing dosages, adding medications I was never meant to take. Gasps filled the room. More heads turned toward Daniel now, not in admiration, but in disbelief. You kept telling people I was unstable, Daniel, Amelia said. But I wasn't. She turned toward the audience again. I was being medicated into instability. And just like that, the illusion cracked, not just for Amelia, but for everyone. Known to cause cognitive impairment. Daniel's face drained of color. This is exactly what I was concerned about, he said loudly, grasping for control. Amelia has been suffering from paranoid delusions. Her doctors have been monitoring. My doctors? Amelia interrupted. You mean the specialists you selected? The ones you met with privately before my appointments? She turned toward the crowd, voice steady. The ones who were instructed to focus on my limitations and ignore my potential for recovery? The screen behind them changed again, this time displaying emails, correspondence between Daniel and various healthcare providers. His messages were highlighted in red, his instructions clear and incriminating. Amelia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The medication manipulation, she continued, was just one part of a larger plan. The screen shifted to financial documents, wire transfers, property records, foundation ledger entries. Daniel needed control of everything, especially our finances. Without my knowledge or consent, he diverted over $8 million from grant development and the Grant Foundation for Inclusive Design. Murmurs turned into open gasps. That money, Amelia said, was earmarked for accessibility initiatives across the Midwest. Instead, it funded his new life with Harper, the penthouse in the Briar, the $200,000 Mercedes parked in her garage. From the crowd, Draymond Jefferson stood abruptly. Daniel, he said, voice sharp. Is this true? He used foundation funds for personal gain? Daniel opened his mouth, but Amelia didn't pause. There's more. The screen changed again, this time to grainy security footage. The video Marcus had saved. It showed Daniel inspecting the unstable platform, paying the foreman, walking away, just hours before Amelia's accident. This footage was deleted from the site's internal system 2 days after I fell, Amelia explained. Luckily, someone had the foresight to keep a copy. Daniel finally snapped. He lunged toward her. Enough, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're confused, delusional. Several guests moved to intercept him, horrified by his outburst, his physical aggression toward his disabled wife now on full display. But Amelia didn't flinch. I'm not confused, Daniel, she said calmly. Not anymore. Then, she took the moment she had been preparing for. Amelia engaged the brake on her wheelchair, placed both hands firmly on the armrests, and slowly, deliberately stood. A collective gasp rippled across the room as she rose to her full height, strong, steady. She took one step, then another. From the side pouch of her chair, she removed a compact folding cane. With practiced grace, she extended it. The silence in the room was deafening. She wasn't just standing, she was reclaiming everything. Proper medical care and intensive physical therapy, Amelia said, standing tall before the stunned audience. I've regained far more function than Daniel ever wanted anyone to know was possible. Daniel's face contorted, caught between rage and disbelief. This is a performance, he sputtered. She can barely. I can walk, Amelia interrupted calmly, with assistance. I can stand for 20 minutes. I can think clearly. She turned back to the crowd, all things Daniel worked very hard to prevent. Her voice never trembled. I'm not sharing this out of vengeance, she said, but accountability. Daniel's actions didn't just hurt me. They harmed everyone who believed in our mission and everyone who donated to our foundation in good faith. From the edge of the crowd, Mayor Harrison stepped forward. Mrs. Grant, these are serious allegations. If they're accurate, every document I've presented has been independently verified, Amelia replied. And full copies have already been submitted to the District Attorney's Office, the State Medical Board, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. As if on cue, the front door opened. Several individuals entered in dark suits, badges visible. A woman stepped forward. Mr. Grant, her voice firm. Special Agent Larson, FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need to speak with you regarding ongoing allegations of wire fraud, embezzlement, and misappropriation of charitable funds. The gala dissolved into chaos. Guests scrambled. Phones lit up. Investors whispered furiously into headsets. Reporters already began making notes. Daniel was quietly escorted into a side room for preliminary questioning. No longer the host of the evening, but its cautionary tale. Amelia remained standing, supported by her cane. One by one, colleagues approached, offering apologies, congratulations, and stunned recognition that they'd been wrong about her for years. Then came Harper, pale, shaken. I didn't know, she whispered, about the medications, about the accident. He told me your condition was mostly psychological, that you refused treatment. Amelia looked at her, not with anger, but with calm clarity. What will you do now? Harper placed a protective hand over her pregnant belly. I don't know, she said. Everything I thought I knew is gone. My issue isn't with you, Amelia replied softly, or your child. She took a breath. Daniel is the architect of his own downfall. As the last guest departed and the investigators continued combing through Daniel's office, Amelia finally returned to her wheelchair. Not because she couldn't stand longer, but because the emotional weight of the evening was finally catching up with her. She had fought her battle, and won. From the doorway, Martina stepped inside, her eyes glassy with pride. You were magnificent, she said quietly, squeezing Amelia's shoulder. Amelia looked out at the space, her home no longer a stage for someone else's lies. Just the beginning of her own story. Amelia looked around the now empty room, the same room that, just a month ago, had been filled with hundreds of guests, each one unknowingly attending what was meant to be her public humiliation. Instead, it had become Daniel's undoing. It's strange, she murmured softly, almost to herself. I spent 3 years feeling trapped in this chair, while Daniel walked free. She turned to Martina, who stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes scanning the aftermath. Now I can stand, Amelia continued, and he's the one whose freedom is in jeopardy. Poetic justice, Martina replied with quiet satisfaction. Amelia shook her head. Not justice, not yet, but it's a start. 1 month later, Mrs. Grant, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview, said Camila Vega, adjusting in her chair as the lighting crew made final tweaks. They were seated in Amelia's studio, once a shadow of her former creative life, now returned to form, bright, open, alive again with architectural models and vibrant design drafts. Amelia wasn't in her wheelchair. She sat comfortably in a modern armchair, her cane propped neatly against the side table, visible but no longer central to her identity. I think it's important to tell this story, she said. Not for me, but for anyone else who might be going through something similar. Camila nodded. Your case has ignited major conversations about medical gaslighting, financial exploitation, and coercive control in marriages. The interview that followed was thoughtful and direct. Amelia spoke with poise as she detailed the slow unraveling of Daniel's betrayal, the careful strategy behind gathering her evidence, and the decision to confront him publicly at the gala. Many people have called that moment the perfect revenge, Camila noted gently. How do you respond to that? Amelia paused, considered her words. It wasn't about revenge, she said. It was about truth and accountability. Daniel didn't just betray me. He violated his professional duties. He endangered workers with construction safety negligence. He stole from a foundation that was meant to help disabled communities. Camila nodded again but pressed carefully. And yet, the personal betrayal, it was profound. Yes, Amelia admitted. Discovering that your spouse manipulated your medication and medical care to keep you vulnerable? That's a violation I wouldn't wish on anyone. She inhaled slowly. But when we focus only on the personal pain, we risk missing the bigger picture. This wasn't just a failed marriage. It was a systemic abuse of trust, power, and resources. The interview covered everything, the ongoing legal proceedings, The federal charges against Daniel for wire fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of charitable funds, and the district attorney's continued investigation into whether criminal charges could be filed related to Amelia's accident, now re-examined through an entirely new lens. Amelia's story was no longer just hers. It had become a voice for others. Daniel maintains his innocence regarding your fall, Camila noted. He claims the security footage simply shows a routine site inspection and a legitimate payment to the foreman. Amelia nodded. The evidence isn't conclusive on that point, she admitted. But the pattern afterward, the way he took control of my medical care, isolated me from colleagues, manipulated my medication, that speaks volumes. After the camera crew packed up and the lights were shut off, Camila stayed behind for tea, curious about Amelia's next chapter. The foundation has been completely restructured, Amelia explained as they sat in her studio. We've appointed a new board, added independent financial oversight, and implemented strict transparency protocols. Every dollar committed to accessibility will actually go to accessibility. And grant development? Camila asked. Amelia smiled. Renamed, she said. It's now the Chen Design Group. We're honoring existing contracts, but the focus has shifted. No more luxury towers. We're returning to our core, sustainable, inclusive architecture. Across town, Daniel sat in his attorney's office, sifting through the fallout, criminal charges, civil lawsuits for medical manipulation and financial fraud. The SEC investigation had frozen most of his assets. Former partners had cut ties overnight. The plea deal is your best option, his attorney said bluntly. The financial evidence is overwhelming. Daniel said nothing. The penthouse once intended for Harper had already been repossessed, now reassigned to the foundation as transitional housing for injured workers. His reputation? Destroyed. Colleagues refused to take his calls. Even his parents had expressed disappointment. Their last message had been short. We raised you better than this. After watching Camila's nationally aired exposé, Harper severed all ties. Once she learned the full extent of Daniel's deception, she began cooperating with investigators, earning full immunity in exchange for her testimony. She had moved back to Oregon, determined to raise her son quietly, far from the scandal Daniel had engineered. Amelia, meanwhile, kept moving forward. She wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was redefining her impact. With Martina's continued support, her physical progress accelerated. She still used her wheelchair for longer days, but she could now walk with her cane for extended periods. Her medical team remained hopeful. The human body is incredibly resilient when it's given real support, Dr. Winters told her during a follow-up, and so is the human spirit, evidently. 3 months later. The first major project unveiled by the Chen Design Group under Amelia's renewed leadership opened to wide industry acclaim. The Phoenix Center, a community hub and wellness space located in the city's historically underserved South End, blended beautiful, sustainable design with full-spectrum accessibility. Named for the mythic symbol of rebirth, it was a fitting metaphor. One not just for a building, but for the woman who had risen from the wreckage of deception and reclaimed her story on her own terms. The deliberate symbolism was impossible to miss. The Phoenix Center wasn't just a rehabilitation facility. It was a space specifically designed for patients recovering from spinal injuries and other mobility-limiting conditions. This building is about dignity, Amelia said at the press conference, standing before a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. Every detail, from the therapeutic gardens to the adaptable living spaces, was designed to support recovery without defining someone by their limitations. Martina stood proudly beside her at the podium. Now serving as the Phoenix Center's Director of Rehabilitation, she and Amelia had transformed their bond into a powerful professional partnership, one built on trust, vision, and lived experience. The project had been largely funded by assets reclaimed from Daniel's fraudulent ventures, a fact Amelia found deeply satisfying. What he had once intended for deceit and indulgence now served as a lifeline for people in need of healing, hope, and independence. Amelia had also rekindled her relationship with Elise, who had relocated back to San Francisco to be closer. The twin sisters were making up for lost time, sharing weekly dinners, redesigning spaces together, and repairing the emotional distance Daniel had carefully manufactured. He always had something come up when I planned a visit, Elise said one evening over pasta and laughter. I can't believe I didn't see it, Amelia replied. Elise squeezed her hand. Manipulation works because it feels reasonable. He didn't cut me off, he just scheduled over me. One excuse at a time. With Elise's support, Amelia had begun writing a book, a brutally honest memoir, documenting her journey from denial to awareness, her unraveling of Daniel's control, and the slow, difficult climb back to herself. It's the small concessions that are most dangerous, one draft read. Each one makes the next easier to accept, until one day, you're living someone else's version of your life. 6 months later, Daniel's legal proceedings came to a close with a plea agreement. It included significant prison time, full financial restitution, and the permanent surrender of his architectural and development licenses. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Fraud, embezzlement, wire transfers. Prosecutors couldn't conclusively prove Daniel had orchestrated Amelia's fall, but the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. At his sentencing hearing, Amelia delivered a victim impact statement that was published by Architectural Digest, Forbes, and republished across major media outlets. Daniel Grant didn't just betray me, she said that day. He betrayed the public's trust, the spirit of innovation, and the mission of building inclusive spaces. He used power to isolate, gaslight, and silence, but silence is a choice I no longer make. As Amelia stepped down from the courtroom podium, supported by her cane and surrounded by her team, the silence that once defined her life had been replaced. By voice, by purpose, by a future designed on her terms. Wife, Amelia said clearly during her victim impact statement. He didn't just betray me, he betrayed his profession's ethical standards, his company's mission, and the trust of every person who believed in our commitment to building spaces that empower, not limit, human potential. She paused before concluding with words that would be quoted far and wide in the days that followed. I hope that, during his incarceration, Mr. Grant finds time to reflect on the difference between success and significance, between building a fortune and building a legacy worthy of respect. Outside the courtroom, reporters pressed for a statement. How do you feel about the sentencing? One asked. Amelia didn't flinch. Justice isn't about vengeance, she replied. It's about accountability and restoration. She gestured toward the press kit her team had distributed. The funds Daniel misappropriated have been recovered and reinvested into the Grant Foundation. They'll fund accessibility projects for years. That matters far more than the length of his sentence. 1 year later, the Lincoln Center buzzed with anticipation as Amelia made her way to the stage. She moved slowly, but independently, her cane tapping lightly against the polished floor. The standing ovation that greeted her wasn't just for her innovative, accessible housing development. It was for her resilience, her return, her reclamation. Architecture, Amelia began, has always been about solving problems. She paused, about recognizing constraints and finding beauty within them, not despite them. In the front row, Martina and Elise beamed. Beside them sat Natalie, Diana, and other colleagues who had rebuilt Chen Design Group from the ruins of Daniel's deception. My experience, Amelia continued, deepened my understanding of how profoundly our physical environments shape our sense of capability and independence. She looked out across the room. Good design doesn't just accommodate disability. It embraces the full spectrum of human ability, and it creates spaces where everyone can thrive. The project being honored that night was built on the very site where Daniel had once planned his luxury tower. Now, the land housed a beautiful, inclusive community, with a training center for disabled architects and designers, dedicated to empowering those with lived experience. And tonight, Amelia said, her voice clear, I'm proud to announce the Amelia Grant Scholarship for Inclusive Design, to ensure our field continues to benefit from diverse perspectives, including those who navigate the world differently. Weeks later, Amelia visited Daniel in prison. Not for reconciliation, for closure. He had requested the meeting several times, and finally, on her own terms, she had agreed. He looked older, smaller. The once charismatic man was faded in his prison uniform, the lines on his face deeper, the carefully managed appearance replaced by weary resignation. Thank you for coming, he said. Amelia sat across from him. She didn't smile, didn't hate. She just looked at him for what he was. A man who had lost everything trying to control someone else's life. And she had reclaimed hers, completely. He looked across the table in the sterile visiting room. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Daniel said. "Neither was I," Amelia replied. An uneasy silence stretched between them, the kind that held years of pain in its pauses. "I've had a lot of time to think," Daniel finally said, "about what I did, to you, to us." Amelia regarded him steadily, offering no comfort. "I destroyed something valuable," he continued. "Not just our marriage, but the partnership, the vision we built." She nodded slowly, but said nothing. Then came the question she had never stopped asking herself. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do it? Was I not enough after the accident?" Daniel's face twisted, genuinely, finally pained. "It wasn't about you not being enough," he said quietly. "It was about me not being enough." He took a shaky breath. "When you were injured, everyone saw me as the heroic husband. It gave me identity, admiration. But secretly, you resented it," Amelia finished for him. He nodded. "Yes, and once I started down that path with Harper, it just became easier to lie. The meds, they gave me control when I felt like I was losing it." His honesty, while far too late, was at least truthful. Amelia stood to leave. Daniel's eyes widened slightly as he watched her walk, unassisted. "You look well," he said. "The therapy must be working." "It is," she said simply, "though it would have worked better years ago without your interference." As she turned to go, he asked the question she had anticipated. "Can you ever forgive me?" Amelia paused, considered. "Forgiveness," she said slowly, "isn't something you're owed, Daniel. It's something I might one day grant, to myself, to stop carrying the weight of what you did." She walked out of that prison lighter, not because of reconciliation, but because she had faced him. On her terms. That evening Amelia sat in the garden of her new home, a space she designed herself. It wasn't the cold glass showpiece she once shared with Daniel. She'd sold that long ago. This space was modest, warm, and entirely hers. A sanctuary that reflected both her needs and her style, thoughtfully crafted with multi-level seating, smooth transitions, and fragrant night-blooming plants. Her phone buzzed. "Martina, Phoenix Center just admitted its 100th patient. Celebration dinner tomorrow?" Amelia smiled. So much had changed in a year. What Daniel had meant as her public undoing had instead become the catalyst for her rebirth and his downfall. She still used her wheelchair when pain or fatigue required it, but it no longer defined her. She saw it now as a tool, no different than her cane, her team, her plans, an extension of her independence, not a limitation. Her disability remained a part of her, but not the whole of her. And most importantly, she had reclaimed her voice, a voice she now used to speak out against manipulation, control, and the quiet cruelties that often go unseen in powerful relationships. She typed her reply, "Yes to dinner, and yes to celebration. We have so much to be grateful for." As twilight deepened and stars appeared above her garden, Amelia looked up and smiled. The path forward wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was hers. And after everything, that freedom was the sweetest victory of all. Amelia Grant's story reminds us that resilience can grow from our deepest wounds, and that true strength sometimes emerges only after we've been broken. Hit that like button if Amelia's journey inspired you. Subscribe for more stories about justice, resilience, and human courage. In the comments, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced gaslighting or witnessed manipulation that made you second-guess your truth? Your insight might help someone else find theirs.